Welcome to Private Equity Profits. Clifford Locks is a certified board of director, a trusted confidant to CEOs, C-level exec, and high-potential employees to help them clarify goals, unlock their potential, and create actionable strategic plans. Seth Green is the nation's foremost authority on growing your portfolio companies with direct response marketing. He is the founder of the direct response marketing firm Market Domination LLC, and he is an 8-time best-selling author who has been interviewed on NBC, CBS, Forbes Inc., CBS Money Watch, and many more. Cliff and Seth interview top players in the financial sector, focusing on private equity firms, venture capital companies, and family offices, discussing developments and trends shaping the industry. These experts will share with you how they've grown their businesses and increased profit, and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Cliff Locks.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Private Equity Profits Podcast. I'm Cliff Locks, your host. Make sure you listen to the end of the podcast. I have an excellent news that solves a significant challenge, as research has shown that 90% of founders don't know how to sell their companies. Today's guest is Kelley W. Powell, founder of MacLaurin Group, a company providing technology operating partner services to the portfolios of private equity companies, providing support to companies in the growth and M&A activities. Kelley brings a unique experience from the founder-led organizations to multiple private equity-led cycles. She's an avid mentor, an angel investor, and is the chairwoman of the Vinci Center for Innovation Angels Advisory Board at VCU. She's a board member of the Richmond chapter of the Association for Corporate Growth, and in 2020 was appointed on Women by gubernatorial appointment. Concentrating on adaptive fashion and impact investing and social investing for individuals with disability, Kelley is also the author of Courage to Lose Sight of Shore, which gives the honest account of what to expect when you pursue private equity. In her book, Kelley guides you to finding the right firm, navigating the process, and scaling the business alongside your new partner. Kelley, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Cliff. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining us. Tell us about your background and how you ended up in private equity technology operation.
You know, I was talking with a colleague of mine just the other day. I think if you'd have asked me before last week, I would have had a different answer. Mm-hmm. But, truth is that I was fortunate when this whole computer thing, this personal computer, started. And there was this class in high school that I took. Then Virginia Tech, my undergraduate degree, started offering this thing in management science, data support systems. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And so my love for it began even in high school and college. So I need to go back and thank those teachers and professors for what they sparked that created this entire career.
That's exciting. You were very, very early into tech. So you grew it into a phenomenal company with a lot of support for our industry, which is really important. We'll get into it even deeper. What makes you so passionate about the growth of businesses as it relates to data and technology?
I think every company is a data and technology company, even if you think you aren't. Right? I mean, MacLaurin Group, we've built out of supporting true software companies, true tech companies. The truth is that every single company has a data component, should have a data component to understand your business. And a technology component to support it. I mean, we saw over the last couple of years, we've seen how everyone has embraced having a technology component to be able to be successful with their business and support growth.
Do you also help them with their cybersecurity?
That piece we don't. We have incredible partners that we support. So feel free to reach out. Happy to connect you. That is a piece that I think is point to caution founders, because I think not everybody has that. And there are certain things that you as a founder, it's okay to have multiple partners so that you have folks that are hyper-focused in a particular area, right? So while hugely important, and we support our founders and thinking and talking about it, that is not us.
Okay. Well, you have partnerships, and partnerships are fabulous when you look at collaborations. It's a seamless solution at that point. What are your basics regarding finding the right private equity investor? What myths do you want to debunk when you're seeking private equity investor?
Yeah. And it may be, I was talking to someone the other day, and my answer to them was, well, I think maybe it's not PE. And, we kind of joked back and forth, and they said, wait, aren't you the one who wrote a book about partnering with private equity? And I said, yes. It's about alignment and making sure that it's the right time and private equity is the right option for you. That doesn't mean that it's right for everyone all the time. And so I think in finding that right private equity partner, you have to first start with, what are you looking for? And what do you need? One of the things I talk about is not necessarily the highest bid. Some people agree with me, some people don't on this, Cliff. Of like, you as a founder, should you look for the highest bidder, or should you look and make sure that you're aligned from culture to team, being able to support from other operators? And that for me is the biggest point, is around alignment. Where do you stand, Cliff?
I've had the privilege of building 3 companies in exit. One of my last ones was to a Fortune 500. It's alignment. It's a marriage. The integration piece of it is extremely important.
That's right.
Can we have those discussions on integration prior to acquisition? Not do it post-close.
Right. I mean, and it's amazing that as this comes up, and you talk to folks who have been successful in a PE partnership versus those who haven't. It's exactly what you just described. The conversations that you have before the transaction are going to be what the reality is going to be on the other side. So I would say the most, the myths of, wow, I can't be open, I can't be transparent, they're only wanting to do this so they can lower the valuation, right? And take me for all I'm worth, that myth. If you're not transparent in those conversations, you are going to be transparent on the other side of this, because you have a new owner. And in that marriage, if you've decided you're going to get married without really showing up with your authentic self, chances are that's not going to work very well. It's the same thing with private equity, and finding the right partner in that. When you are transparent about the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, you want that right partner who sees that as an opportunity for growth, because their skill set, or maybe something in their longer strategic plan, to your point of being able to grow together and in the right way. So I think that expectation setting up front, you've got to be open and you've got to lean in order.
Look, some of these deals have earnouts. I mean, you're going to have, you want to be aligned, and you want the upside, and they're going to pour in fuel. That's called money, resources. And being aligned and collaborative and open, that due diligence process is just what it is. They're looking to uncover things. Some of the best deals don't get done.
Yeah. I think also being okay with stepping away from what you think might be a great deal. If you aren't aligned, it's okay. There are others out there that if you have built a really phenomenal business, you put in the effort to find the right partner so you can be hugely successful together. And so don't get nervous just because you may be stepping away from what you feel is a really great deal.
Excellent.
Put in the effort to find the one who's a great deal and also incredibly aligned.
Let's turn this the other way now. Okay. What do you think private equity firms look for when they're considering investing in a company?
Yeah. Well, you have to be profitable.
Okay.
You have to have proven that. And I think even with some of the earlier stage and where we're seeing some of the lines, I think between VC and private equity getting a little bit gray. They are definitely blurring. But I think you do have to prove that you are generating revenue.
Okay.
And for me, and I think, so this is Kelley's view of the world of private equity, right? I think the other thing that's the most important is, what is your client retention and why? not always are the clients that are bringing in the most revenue of the money, the income that's coming in.
Mhm.
How much is it costing you to support them?
Very good.
Or right. And so what is the cost of a client? What does that mean? Where are the profits that you're bringing in for customers? And it may sometimes be that those bigger accounts that you think that are the ones that are really supporting your business, they may not be at all. It may be the others that are more profitable. So understanding not just what are your highest income clients that are bringing it in, but where are you making your profits? What are those clients and why? And are you able to keep them year after year? Because that's really, the recurring revenue and being able to see that you have growth, but growth is being able to add more clients on top of what you're existing rather than to just have this constant churn.
It's interesting. You bring up something that's very foundational. So if you can really step back and understand the persona of your best customers, they're extremely profitable. You're very good at servicing their needs. You get paid on time.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we just go in and bring in a mirror of those type of clients?
Right. What is your perfect client? Like, where are you winning?
Right.
Where are you winning? And also, and winning doesn't necessarily mean that you've never made a mistake with them.
It's okay.
Right. Maybe you've made a bump, but they've stuck with you. Like, where are your most loyal clients?
Right.
And do you know which ones they are? And do you have a relationship with them to truly, is it transactional?
Okay.
Or do you have a relationship with those clients where they would step up for you and be a reference for other clients?
Very good.
Yeah.
Here we are in October 2022, and you can see the economy at this point and some of the lines of credit, starting to get a little difficult. Some of the money flowing in from PE and VC is slowing down. They're doing larger deals, but some of the earlier deals are not as easy at this point to get closed. So,
it is. It's, and it's not dissimilar to kind of the start of COVID. I think 100% agree with you that the debt and the deals there, PE are now focusing again on their portfolios, right? The success of their portfolios. They're focusing internally as the deal flow slows down. But that doesn't mean, even during COVID, deal flow didn't stop.
Yeah, definitely.
It slowed down.
Right.
And again, that piece of finding your right fit partner and knowing your story of what is it that you feel like is special and you about your business that is going to be recession proof.
Excellent.
Because folks are still looking for great ways to spend their money to have it perform during a recession. It doesn't mean that it's just all dried up.
No, not at all.
It means it's harder.
Right. Well, the weak players are going to fall out, which is going to give the opportunity to the PE firms and the firms that are being financed through PE that'll have more staying power to thrive as things continue. We'll pick up, it's a cycle, and we've been through it multiple times. The fortitude in our PE community is very vibrant, especially some of our senior investors, have been through the 2007, 2008. They understand, and the strong will continue to grow.
And they are true investors who are saying,
long term,
I'm going to invest my way out of this.
Very good.
And they're going to see it. And so they are looking for those founders. So I would say to founders, don't take some of the bad of what you're hearing and make a decision on it. Put in the extra effort to see who are those who are still wanting to invest in founders throughout this.
Look after your clients. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying the bills. And when they're doing well, you're doing well. What are their needs? What are their customers' needs at this point? How can you increase the offerings that you have that will still be profitable to help them thrive?
And it's interesting that you say that, because going back, since we're kind of talking about that, this is somewhat aligned to how we were at the start of the pandemic. You can also be creative, and to your point of having those relationships and conversations. Like, at the start of the pandemic, we had a few clients that said, okay, I don't think I can pay you. We're going to have to step away. And what I knew was the work we were doing was going to be the investment for what would, continue to have them be successful. First of all, I wasn't going to be the reason that they didn't succeed during COVID, but you have the conversations of, okay, well, if you can't, that's not good for anyone, then don't pay me. But let's not have that conversation because we are going to be successful. Let's delay it. Pay me when you can.
Sure.
But we want to see you be successful. We want to see you, right? There's no scenario where I would say, I want you to see you go out of business. So having a relationship where you can have those conversations with clients, especially during a recession period where you give them the grace, they think that they have a true partner and you're in this together.
Excellent.
Huge.
Very good.
Don't be afraid to have those conversations, right? Because sometimes it's really uncomfortable and they're hard conversations to have, but you can find solutions that you wouldn't otherwise find if you didn't have those conversations.
Very sound advice, Kelley. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. What are the challenges and pitfalls associated with private equity investments, and how do you overcome them?
I think, though, this goes back to kind of what, like, all myths are steeped in some amount of truth, right?
Okay.
So for the founders, we talked about earn out, staying on, however you want to do that. Getting too much hubris of like, you have to perform. And I talk about this. I don't care how lovely you are. You have to perform. And so you are still, and one of the things I talk about in the book is that you're still the captain of your ship. And think of yourself as in a fleet. Now you have an admiral. So the PE company that's coming in, the investor, you're still a captain of the ship. You still have to make sure that we're going to be successful in this voyage. It's up to you. But you have an investor and a PE firm who has a perspective across the market. They have that experience of being able to bring in other folks or perspective. And so listen to them and trust that when they are wanting to surround you with support or bring others in, that their money is on the table. They want to be successful. They're not doing it because they want to see the company not succeed. So letting loose a little bit of that control that you're used to having, that's hard. But the truth is, together, you are going to be successful, that you're not going it alone. So again, that kind of same thing as we were talking about of before the transaction, being open and transparent and communicative. I think one of the, I can see this particular client sitting across from the table. I can tell you exact moment, what he was wearing, everything, where, he's frustrated because he says, they just won't leave me alone. They're just hounding me all the time with questions. And I said, okay, we need to do a better job of already having the answers for what they need, because it's not like they are not inconveniencing us by asking us about how the business is growing. We need to be in a position where you're already telling them that. And so part of that goes back to the start of data analytics and knowing your business and what are the numbers and what are the key performance indicators and how we're making that work to be able to know where our business is going. That's the only way to be able to do that. And you need to be proactive in that instead of waiting for the questions to come to you. You want to be the you want to be the CEO in the portfolio that's easy.
Good point. You got to meet those expectations. They're not going away. They're probably sitting on the board of directors with you or a board of advisors, or they can help the team acquire those team members that can help them in areas that they're struggling in.
100%.
Ask for resources early. You got your projections. They're going to hold you to it. There's no magic here. I mean, it's a business.
It's a business at the end of the day.
What are the keys to creating the right partnership between private equity firms and the companies they acquire?
I think that goes back to the expectation setting up front and what you're going to accomplish together.
Excellent.
If you know, right, and because it is typically a hold of 3 to 5 years, it may, if you're looking for a family investment or maybe a VC, you have different goals. So having that upfront conversation of what does success look like? What are our metrics of where we want to grow? And look, but you and I both know that doesn't mean that we might have built such a successful business that we said we're going to have a whole 3 to 5 years, but yet all of a sudden you and I have been so hugely successful together that 2 years in, somebody's going to swoop in and say, I want to acquire this company. I think you're a phenomenal business. I want you to stay on. Whatever it is, the conversation is. It might be that we're having a conversation even before we're ready. So I think the knowing your business, knowing your numbers all the time. And I mean, knowing them, not that I have to say, oh, Cliff, thank you for asking me that. Let me get you something by tomorrow. No, we should be able to roll off those answers to your questions anytime I ask, or anyone asks, right? Bringing someone in, you're walking down the hallway, walking through the office, you get a phone call, be able to know what those key indicators for your business are right now and in this moment, so that you're ready for those conversations. But regardless of that, knowing what are our goals of what we want to grow and how we want to grow together, so that we are accomplishing that. And we know when we've gotten to success by both of us, or we know when we haven't and what we need to do to get there.
So the corrective action. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important. You're going to set expectations with the PE firm. They're going to hold you to it. It's not rocket science. You got to perform. The ability to communicate and to keep that open, they are very seasoned with their resources that they can bring in, because they have investments in multiple companies, most PE firms. So when you look at it, nothing is really, really new to them. So the idea of articulating, what's going well, where do you need the help, and where are we 3 to 5 years out? And do we need another infusion of an investment based on getting to, as you suggested earlier, the vision of success that's agreed on between the PE firm and the company? So because they're going to need to go back to their investors to be able to continue to line up the resources that are needed for the continuing of the scaling of the company. So,
yeah. And I think, as you say that, I think about the fact that it's a good point in kind of doing your own due diligence on whatever your partner is ahead of time, because where you said, look, they should have experience across their portfolios.
Sure.
Most of the portfolios, as well as the PE firms at MacLaurin Group, have been about software companies, technology investments. One of the things you as a founder can do is to see, am I like the other portfolios in the fund? Because maybe they aren't. We made the assumption just then that this PE firm has experienced the similar experience across all their other portfolios. Maybe this is the first time they're stepping out in something new. And I would say right now, as far as it's even more important during a recession, that you're joining team with a PE firm that this is kind of their core. This is where they've won. This is where they have a proven track record of where they've won in the past. And part of that is looking at where their past investments, where are those portfolios, where are their CEOs, what happened to them, and did they succeed? And even going back to previous recessions and previous timelines of how did they act when the economy wasn't in our favor, right? That's all there. You can, granted, it's private investment, so not everything is there, but there's enough of a glimpse to understand where folks are now that you can understand, was it a successful partnership? Was it a successful relationship?
So not just the PE firm doing due diligence, the company needs to do the due diligence to reach out to some of the prior and the current CEOs of portfolio companies and listen, what would you do different?
Right.
What was the integration? What did you do?
How did it work?
What did you learn? Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to you and your team. Let's talk about the technical and data expertise that you offer private equity and investment groups.
Yeah. So we, over the past 5 years, we have been technologists. We've had background of being partners in PE. You've heard my story. I'm a lifelong lover of data. I believe that data doesn't tell a lie. It tells a story. If you don't like what data is saying, then you can do something about it. But if you're going to really look at it, there's nothing more true about your business than to look at the data and say, okay, how are things going? And to give an honest look. We more recently pivoted to an investment group. And when we first started MacLaurin Group, people would say all the time, well, you do investing, you invest in founders, you invest with some of your clients. And I would always say, well, I do that philanthropically. I do that to give back. That's not the business we're in. As it turns out, how you spend your time and passion, they tend to take on a life of their own. So we, our partners are now at our clients as private equity partners, because I picked up the phone, just like starting MacLaurin Group, starting with talking to clients about this is the service and the product we're going to be offering. I did the same thing with clients when I said I was going to do a pivot. I wanted to talk to them first about what we were doing, because I think that if you're meeting the needs of your clients, right, you're going to be successful in the next thing that you do.
Very important. Share with me what inspired you to write the book, Courage to Lose Sight of Shore. How do you help others decide if private equity investments is the right move for growing their company?
I wrote it for a couple of different reasons. I think, one, I think we've touched on the fact that there are myths and of why folks are a little bit afraid of some of the stories they hear about private equity. I've had the fortunate experience to work with amazing folks in the PE industry who truly invest in founders. Not everyone does. Some people work against founders, not with them. I have been able to work with companies who really invest in founders and their companies for life changing. It's really life changing, right? For what happens. And so I wanted to make sure the good stories were out there about why PE is a good investment. I think folks don't necessarily understand that it fuels endowments for government, for police officers, for firefighters, for universities, and of how all that works. And so I wanted to get those stories out there and highlight some of our clients who are just incredibly lovely humans that are doing great things in the world, and why you should consider PE. And the other piece to it for me was the leadership lessons. And you often touch on this in your podcast, which is one of the reasons I am an avid listener, is that you can build a really amazing, successful business by doing the right thing. And the leadership lessons about how you do that, of showing up for customers and showing up for your employees and showing up for your investors and putting good in the world of how you make your decisions as a leader. So with one of my mentors, Bill Royal, who I worked with at Royal & Company on the education marketing side, he's no longer with us, but when I was writing the book, we were able to collaborate. And I wanted to highlight all of those leadership lessons that a lot of companies would say, you can act that, you can do it that way. But he really had a purpose of expecting that of each one of his executive team members. And I think that's the difference between creating a culture of allowing people to show up in that way versus creating a culture of expecting everyone to show up to do the right thing. It doesn't mean that you don't deliver bad news or you don't mess up, but you do the right thing and you grow an amazing business in that way. So that's why I wrote the book.
I'm happy for you.
So I hope that your listeners will find it some valuable lessons in there. And if they do, please reach out, let me know what resonates, what they disagree with. I'm always fun to have the folks who will reach out and tell me, no, Kelley, you're completely wrong. No. So happy to have the coffee conversation about that. I welcome it. So both where you agree with me and also where you disagree.
So Kelley's book is Courage to Lose Sight of Shore. Okay. I see that you're an active fundraiser and awareness for Alzheimer's research. Most of our listeners probably know someone living with dementia or Alzheimer's, as 1 out of 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or another dimension. It's a significant challenge as more than 6 million Americans live with the disease. And in 2022, Alzheimer's disease will cost the United States $321 billion. This number is projected to rise to $1 trillion in 2050. The physical and mental toll on the family members supporting their loved ones is immense. Tell us about your upcoming Alzheimer's walk in Richmond, Virginia, and how our listeners can learn more.
Yes. Thank you, Cliff, for this. Look, when I first became involved with the Alzheimer's Association, I didn't have a personal connection other than my son being interested in it in high school. He's now at Columbia Med School, but he started a group at his high school here in Virginia for awareness. And so I got involved and I started to learn. And once I was on the board, I found out my father had dementia, began with Alzheimer's, and he allows me to share his story as an advocate. And I think the moment for me was when he came to one of our Breakfasts of Hope. And it was the first time I'd really seen my dad tear up. And I was like, Dad, what's happening? What's happening? And, he said to the speakers, he was like, I don't want to let my daughter down. And it gave me this perspective as an advocate that as a caregiver, sometimes we think we're supporting someone by telling them how capable they are. But then if the next day, if tomorrow my father can't drive a car, does that mean he's less than? No, it doesn't. And being able to have the support, look, if you Google Alzheimer's Association of Greater Richmond, or you can go on my LinkedIn, there's plenty on my LinkedIn. I know you're going to put the link in the notes. You can find out about it. Come join me, be on my team. If you're in Richmond, I'd be thrilled for you to come join me. And so I walk because I want to find a cure for this, because I think that nobody should go through life forgetting who they love or that they themselves are deeply loved. And it's really hard on the caregivers.
Yes.
And I think, as I tie that back, as we're kind of closing to, this period that we're in with founders and finding someone who believes in your company, I found myself as chair of the Alzheimer's Association at the start of the pandemic. We had to make some tough choices, but folks were saying, like, we can't possibly ask for people to give. And the truth was, Alzheimer's wasn't going to stop, so we couldn't. And there were plenty of people who couldn't give at that time, or maybe couldn't give as much. But there were folks who were willing to at least give something. And there were also folks that, they could give. They could absolutely give during that time. And so you have to make the ask. And it's harder to find the funding in a recession, but it's there. So if there's a mission that you have and a purpose that you believe in, and for that it was bigger around community, then put yourself out there and make the ask, make the ask.
There are resources out there. Our family was touched with Alzheimer's and dementia. My dad passed away recently.
I'm so sorry.
As we get older, we're going to see, more of this as a larger increase in population. So consider bringing hospice in earlier than later is a piece of wisdom that you can share within the family. They'll bring in some guidance that will help you and the loved ones that are within that are providing support. Now, I was fortunate. I'm one of 5 siblings, and we all pitched in and we all got along. So yesterday was the day to celebrate my dad's life. The family came together.
Oh, Cliff, that's beautiful.
So it was very, touching moment. So thank you for what you're doing in the organization and the important work you're doing. We'll solve it. We don't know as much about the brain at this point, and I think over time we're learning more and more. And then you understand data, so you understand artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all that is pushing into that particular piece of science, and that's going to help us, definitively figure out, it's a puzzle.
Cliff, I will share on a very personal note to what you just said. I think, we're all learning and we're figuring those things out. And I I think the hospice is a great thing that is important. And I think there's tremendous amount of support for the caregivers. That's free, that's out there. So be in the support groups. I got married this past July. And my father, as a part of the wedding, isn't at a point where he can remember things all the time. And, you've been there, you get it.
Yeah, the sunset.
And we were doing karaoke and he wanted to sing Elvis, Love Me Tender. And I recorded it. And my father knew every single word, singing that with me at the wedding. I couldn't even remember all the words, but Dad did. So I would say that music is a wonderful way to communicate and touch your loved ones that are living with this and fighting with this disease.
Excellent. So the support for the what we call the sandwich generation. So usually laying most of it on women, to understand they have their own children, and now you have the parents, and then you're in the middle of this, and you got to provide support for both sides. So I'm saying back out to our listeners at this point, the ability to be flexible with time and personal time off will allow the families to provide those services, and that's important.
That's hugely important.
Kelley, is there anything I haven't touched on that you would like to add?
I think this has been such a lovely conversation, and there were things I would have added, but I have to tell you, with my whole heart, I would love to leave the conversation right there about our dads, Cliff and I. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for sharing.
How can our listeners contact you? Are there any links that you'd like to share?
I will. Let's put my LinkedIn in the notes for folks that they can find me. Kelley, Kelley, Powell, Powell, when you search on LinkedIn. And you can also email me at Kelley, Kelley, at KelleyWPowell.com. And I would love to hear from you, whether it's fundraising, whether it's community, whether it's a founder, particularly if you are in social impact investing around disability and adaptive fashion. That is my latest passion. But any way that I can support and help you, please reach out. And if you buy the book, let me know what resonates. Always appreciative of folks giving it a read.
Thank you for that, Kelley. I promise to share that excellent news that solves a significant challenge, as 90% of our founders don't know how to sell their companies. I've co-founded with the global team at the Hyper Accelerator, a new market-leading mergers and acquisition accelerator program to help founders prepare to sell or merge their companies with our 100-day global virtual accelerator program. The M&A Hyper Accelerator will prepare portfolio companies to be acquired and maximize their exit value, the integration, and the life post-sale. You can learn more about the program at Startup. That's startupcourse.com. Again, startupcourse.com. And click on the M&A application. Again, visit startupcourse.com and click on that M&A application. Thank you so much for your time, Kelley. Your insights into the relationships between private equity investors and the companies that you invest in is going to help many founders and senior executives make the educated decisions on the value of partnering to accelerate the growth of their company. Thank you for sharing that vision. I want to thank our listeners. I look forward to being back with you shortly for another episode of the Private Equity Profits Podcast. This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC.